So I'm going to start out just by going down the row and just get our folks to briefly introduce themselves, and then I'll kind of lay the groundwork for what we're going to do, what we're going to talk about, and we'll go from there. So Tom, let's start with you.
Well, I'm Tom Jones from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, and former church planter, currently licensed professional counselor.
Tim York, I host the Pastors Hangout that we have monthly.
Anna Fox, I work for the executive office and help with all of the growing together as Zoom calls and pastor's wife hangout.
Sherman Branch, I'm former pastor and now do a ministry called Songs in the Night.
Robert Posner, former pastor, have ministry 2416. We're both, my wife and I both are certified professional mentors.
I'm Judy Posner, the better half.
And she's also, we're not going to call her a diva, but she has very specific instructions about the panel, so I kind of did. So I do believe she is the better half, and she keeps Robert in line. So I got a question. I'm going to start out with you all. How many counseling sessions do you think have been provided by the National Association of Free Will Baptists to pastors and or their wives? We'll go ahead and tell you a few children are involved in that too. But if you were to guess, let's just throw some guesses out. How many sessions do you think our folks have conducted over the last 2 years, since the National was in Birmingham in 2022, right? Throw out some numbers. How many? 2,000? Okay. What'd you say, Brother Ricky? Okay. All right. I haven't played The Price is Right in a long time. What? Miss Payne, is that what you said too? Oh, okay. If we were going to give out a prize, which we're not, but if we were, I think we would give it to Miss Payne. Now, I think the number, Tom, how many have you done?
I think I reported to you Friday, 12/27, 1,227.
Okay.
That's since June of 2022.
All right, and that means that I probably didn't look at my message good, but I did send you back a thumbs up, didn't I?
You always do.
Okay, I always do. So I'm estimating, and you may say, how come you don't know exactly? I'm estimating it's in the 1,500 number. So what you have to know is we have 9 helping professionals. Tom is the workhorse, and so that's going to lead to the first question I'm going to ask him in a minute. I apologize, Ms. Pam, for calling him a horse, but anyway, you know what I mean. He works hard, okay? And so, but yeah, okay, sorry about that. I'm sorry. And so we're back. So we have Brother Tom. We have he's kind of our primary guy. We also have people that work in special situations, and so I will go ahead and tell you, one of them is extreme, unusual grief kind of situations, and actually that's a professional that. We'll just leave it at that. Has worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different situations and people that you would have heard of outside of Free Will Baptist, we'll say. I think we've got 3 ladies. We've got a psychologist that was in my church in the church that I pastored in Clayton, North Carolina. We have 1 psychiatrist. We have a biblical counselor, and all of it comes together and we end up with 9 people. But what happens is somebody emails. In the old days, they would call and they would just go through and say, we've got a difficulty. And unfortunately, it feels like most of the time I was in an airport. And so I know they can hear in the background what's happening. We'll probably talk about this. Brother Sherman called me the one time, and I know I kind of cut him off because I was going to get on an airplane to go to Arkansas, I believe it was, or Oklahoma one. But anyway, so that's the way it was in the early days. Now what we say to people is email us at questions@nafwb.org and put in the subject line counseling. They will get almost an immediate response. So we placed 2 people in last year on Christmas Eve, for example. We placed people all through the season, and even in the midst of quite some busy times. So we'll usually respond, it's me, and I'll ask them a little bit about their situation, and I'm always wanting the phone number. So if you're ever dealing with people, I want their name, I want their phone number, and I'm probably going to respond to them very quickly. So I know I had somebody email me on Friday. I responded within 7 minutes, and I've not heard from that person since, So I think some people assume this is going to be a long time process. I don't care what we're doing or where we're at. We move quickly, right? And we usually place the person within a 24-hour process. We can do it quickly if it's with Tom, but even if it's some of our other people, we're able to do that as well, although we have to know a little bit about the situation. Sometimes that requires me talking to them a bit. So later, if you've got questions about the process, we can explain that. But in my mind, I think of Tom as we're getting close to 1,300 sessions, is the way I kind of look at it. And so he's got a good feel for the themes, the issues that are coming up. So let's start out by just asking that, Tom. What are the main themes, if we were kind of track them down, that you're running into with our folks that you counsel with?
Sure. As listening to Dr. McIntosh last night, my thought was what he was describing was so much what I hear on a daily basis. I think I reported to you this week. I think I did 22 appointments with Free Will Baptist last week, and the most common theme that guys have on their mind when they reach out to Eddie and then he refers them to me is just simply fatigue. So many of you guys are, you're doing the work. And I tell guys all the time, you guys are my heroes. You guys that are out on those front lines, and you may be maybe people don't know your name like they do some. And I was listening to Pastor Rob earlier, and talking about what all of his experiences, and that's great and wonderful. But a lot of guys don't ever experience that. And you guys are there on the front line, and you're doing the work, but just not seeing any growth. And we call it burned out. We're not really burned out. We're fatigued. And I think that a lot of that comes from not really being familiar with working through the emotions that you're experiencing. So I think the number one thing that I deal with is just guys that are fatigued. And people of all, I'm talking about pastors of all ages, that they're talking to me about getting out of the pastorate. They're talking about quitting, because as we know, we shepherd sheep, and some sheep bite, and some sheep bite hard. And when you've been bitten over and over and over through the years, sometimes that's just hard to take. And what most of those folks tell me, I was talking to one of our pastors the other day and was talking about some stuff, and I said to him, now, does this kind of make sense to you, or does this sound like a bunch of psychobabble to you? And he said to me, well, you do babble quite a lot. And I said, well, I guess I do. But the point is that what almost everybody that I work with, when they tell me what helps them, is just simply having a safe place to talk. Just a safe place. Listen, if you reach out to me and you just want to spend an hour telling me how angry you are, I'll listen. If you're sad, you're brokenhearted, you don't know what, I want to listen. I want to hear that. I welcome that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You asked me what were the main things that I experienced.
So we got one in.
All right.
Hey, so hold it. He's talking about it a lot because it's a lot.
It's real. It's very, very real.
And so it's obvious.
Yes,
we're
sir.
Kind of getting into fatigue.
Yes,
we're kind
sir.
of getting into loneliness and so
Yes,
forth.
sir.
So that's okay.
Yes, sir. And let me clarify this. Eddie and I don't talk about what I talk to folks about. Now, there's been some cases where we've literally been trying to keep guys alive. Literally trying to keep them alive, and we will work some with that. But he knows that I don't talk to him about what I talk to the pastors about. I assign a number to each pastor that I work with, and Eddie doesn't know who that number is. He will know, let's say Pastor 10, let's say, for example, had X number of appointments this month. But Eddie has no idea who pastor number 10 is. Only I know that. And so it's all confidential. Everything we talk about will be confidential. So just fatigue is the first one. The second one, the most common that I deal with, is lack of connection in the pastor's marriage. That's one I see a lot. Our wives try to be cheerleaders for us, right? I know there's a couple of ladies in here. Pam has been one of my biggest cheerleaders through the years. And but after a while, that takes a toll. And I just work with someone, there's just a lack of connection in the marriage. Probably then the third most common thing that I deal with is what I call compulsivity. And unfortunately for pastors, that's often pornography, simply because it's so accessible. That's one of the things that I deal with. And then I've been a little bit surprised. I've done a good bit of work with grief with pastors whose wives have died. And those are the primary things that I deal with that I have people reach out to me about.
So we get feedback from our folks, whoever they may see. And one of the things we've gotten from people is, it would be nice to talk to people who've gone through sometimes what I've gone through. And sometimes we look at that. Tom just mentioned pastors who've lost wives. And we also have actually more pastors who've lost wives than wives who've lost their husbands, although that is a good portion of it as well. And so part of what we pick up from that is it'd be nice to talk to somebody who's kind of been through this before, just to know you're not alone. And we're also thinking for people who've been through some of these things before, it may be good for them to do some of that. You're going to see in a minute, we've got a pastor who's lost his wife in a situation, Brother Sherman, and you've got the Posners who we'll talk about like compulsive behaviors and so forth, but we think it's good to see somebody who's been through these things and have come out on the other side of it, right? So that kind of gets us to, yes, we're looking at these things, they're confidential. We do want to look at doing more flourishing. And I will say to you, I'll just give you one little example. Last week, we had someone that was struggling, right? And so we kind of start out and say, what's the particular need here? And really, there's 3 different needs that person probably has when I'm kind of taking them and assessing them on the front end of that. And with that, I wanted them to start with Tom, but I'm also utilizing a medical professional because it's physiological in nature. And then I'm also going to utilize, I believe, Robert, right? But I don't want to start, if we're talking about, depending on the situation, I'm not starting with Robert. I'm either starting with our medical personnel or I'm starting with Tom. And so I do say, even though we're about to go through and talk about some things that would be of a non-professional counseling setting, we do want you to start here, because if you start in the wrong place, if there's something physiological wrong, you will not get better until we address that, okay? So let's kind of start out with some of the things that are in place that people may not really be aware of, and we're going to be dealing with your first 2 issues, really, is, I'm fatigued, I'm burned out, and I'm a pastor, and it feels like everybody else, maybe we verbalize it, maybe we don't, feels like they're successful and I'm not. So Brother Tim's been doing this thing called the Pastor Hangout. I'm wondering about that a little bit.
Well, what we do is we meet about once a month, and people sign up. How many of you have ever been on one of our pastor hangouts? I know some of you have. Okay, there's several of you. And it's really neat to watch us. It's kind of like the best way to describe it, it's like going to pastor's luncheon or a pastor breakfast where everybody sits around the table, drinks coffee, eats breakfast, and a conversation breaks out about something. Now, sometimes we have topics. Other times we just get on there and see what everybody has to say. And one day I was sitting there watching, and a pastor out west was having an issue, and a pastor in the east was helping coach him. And I thought, wow, we couldn't have done that 10 years ago. For me, it's exciting because we get an opportunity to see young and old. We get to know people. We get to fellowship. We get to talk to one another. I don't think Stephen will mind. Stephen Hood is in Arizona, and he's, I wouldn't say isolated. There's other churches, but he doesn't have the accessibility that many of us have to fellowship. And so he gets an opportunity there. But also for me, it's an opportunity to sit in my office. Now, we ask you not to eat on camera because that's really gross. But anyway, we usually have a cup of coffee or whatever and just sit there and hang out. And it's not dead time. It's not boring. It lasts an hour. We don't hold you all day. But we talk about things, and it just kind of involves. And so you don't feel alone. I feel very connected to the guys who've joined this group throughout this year and a half, 2 years we've been doing it. And it's always been, I don't think we've ever had a bad session. It's always been good because
good.
people talk and they fellowship.
So that is really a way to prevent things from happening, and it's also just a way of helping people be encouraged and not be lonely. So that's one avenue. We really think we need that in multiple situations. In other words, if you can do that in person, if you could get together at the Black Bear Cafe, in Buckeye with 4 or 5 other fellows and so forth. We want to pour gasoline on those kinds of activities.
And can I just add this? One of the things it shows us, we all have the same issues. Like when we talk about volunteers, we all had the same issue.
Yeah.
Or when we talk about, the function of a service, or one time we talked about how do you get rid of somebody who's not doing well at their job in the church. And it was interesting to see the different ideas. We don't have any professionals among us. It's just us having that conversation.
Very good. So what about pastors' wives? And what about other kinds of situations? And so Anna has been working with Miss Carolyn Dwyer, helping with the pastor's wife hangout. And also, you may know the WNAC does these growing together activities. They do one a month. Talk to us a bit about those things, Anna.
Well, the pastor's wife hangout is pretty similar to the pastor's hangout. It's just a place for pastors' wives to come, get connected. A lot of our pastors' wives don't have another Free Will Baptist church anywhere near them, so they're lacking that fellowship. So this has been a place for them to come and kind of, bear one another's burdens and just share with each other and to grow together and to have some connection and a place to just kind of breathe and not be the pastor's wife and have to worry about what they're saying or what they're doing. They can just kind of have a community. Then the growing together, we have a different topic each month, and we've invited different presenters to present. And then there's a time of discussion at the end on these topics. One of them was caregiving. And we were surprised to see how many people in our denomination are in the realm of caregiving, and it's a need. And it was something where they were lonely, they were by themselves trying to figure this out, and a lot of them were pastors' wives and pastors that joined together on this. So we were able to branch out and start something called a caregiver support group. And that way, caregiving, we had some people who have been through caregiving be able to talk to them and give ideas, just how to network, how to get your parent into an assisted living or a nursing home and things like that they just didn't have the help for.
Very good. And so with the next 2 dates, or maybe write these down if you can, the next Pastor Hangout is January the 16th at 1 p.m. Central Time. That's January the 16th at 1 p.m. Central Time. The next Pastor's Wife Hangout is January 23rd at 11 a.m. Central Time. Now, again, you could always go and sign up for either one of those at questions@nafwb.org. Just put Pastor's Hangout or Pastor's Wife Hangout, but they could also sign up by going to the website, couldn't they, and using, is it the Google form? And using the Google form that's there. So check that out.
Also, Brother Eddie, I'm willing, if we have enough guys who are, they're working bivocational and they want to do an evening. We tried one evening, and that was our lowest attendance. So, if there are people who want to do that, we'd be glad to do that.
And I know Anna and Miss Carolyn have done that as well for the ladies. Similarly, it seems like those are often the lowest attendees. For whatever reason, it works for the Growing Together WNAC activities, but just email and let them know, and we'll work on that. So again, those are kind of flourishing activities that we want to take and we want to spin up and really want them to grow. I'm going to step back a little bit, and I'm going to get Brother Sherman, if he will, to share. If you think about it and you listen to the Better Together podcast, you've heard Brother Sherman share his story a bit. And so I think he can share why it is important to do what we can to flourish, but also when we're struggling to go ahead and get some assistance. He can talk about it from a pastor and a pastor wife standpoint.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, of course, as you guys know. With my wife's passing a little over 2.5 years ago now, under some of the most difficult of circumstances. And when I first came into this journey, I'm like a lot of guys, I can handle this. I'll be okay. And I was approached by Dr. Moody about getting into the counseling program. And I'm glad I did. I really am glad I did, because I found out no matter how much I thought I had it together, I didn't have it together. And so the counseling program has become such a valuable asset to our denomination. And I'm so proud of our guys for doing this, and have done my best to try to, even in our state, to expand that as much as we can, and we've done some of that, and I'm thankful for that there in North Carolina. But I would highly recommend, if you're struggling, reach out. We are better together. Mm-hmm. We really are. And the one thing that I found about this that really resonated with me is that I felt safe. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could just share my hurt, my pain, my anger, mm-hmm. and not be condemned for that. And just know that somebody was listening. And in those early stages, honestly, I don't know that, Brother Tom, you really offered a whole lot of counseling. Yeah. Just listening. Yeah. And that meant the world to me. And so I'm so thankful for the program. And again, I'd encourage any of you, pastors' wives, reach out. It's just that valuable.
So the first thing, I think, if you hear what Brother Sherman's saying is, number one, it's confidential. Mm-hmm. So you can say anything you want to say, unless you're a danger to yourself or a danger to others, or you're abusing someone in certain situations. And that's where we start moving. The other thing that you mentioned is it's important, not to wait, right? To do what we can to go ahead and to grow and address it. And I will say we've come a long way since the early days with Brother Sherman. So when things happen with his wife, that's what led us. Basically, I think many of you know this story. We could not afford to do this. And I went to Dr. Crow and Dr. Brad Ransom, and they said, "We got you." And we really didn't know what we would have or how it would go, but the Lord has provided. Since then, IM has come on, Board of Retirement, the foundation has helped and supported. And then we got North Carolina and Missouri and other states have given directly to that, so has helped us in a great way.
Brother Eddie, if I may, real quickly, a couple of the denominational or the department leaders have spoken to me since I've been here, and they say, Tom, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it's taken care of.
Yeah.
I can't say how thankful I am for Dr. Moody and different ones that have seen the need for this. And I'm just so very, very, I'm personally honored to be a part of it. So thank you guys so much for what you're doing.
And we don't want you to think that everything that's, you heard the list of things that Tom mentioned, but there are some things that are very serious. And he kind of alluded to it. We do believe this program has saved lives. So we have that. So we also have the Posners down here. I'm hoping that I don't have to take a mic away from one particular person, but Miss Judy, she might just start talking, Robert. I don't know. But we heard Tom mention that one of the things we have is, we have compulsive behaviors, and he mentioned it, pornography is one of the ways that it shows up. I think if, I think people would be surprised how frequent that happens. So why don't you tell us a bit about the importance of getting help early and how help can be helpful?
I saw a quote recently. It said, if you get on the wrong train, get off at the next exit, because the longer you stay on, the more expensive the return ride will be. And when it comes to the issue of unbiblical sexual behavior, and whatever the broadness of that term, it could be pornography, but it could also just be inappropriate closeness with a member of the opposite sex. It could be even battling with same-sex attraction, a number of other issues that are unbiblical. But whatever that is, the longer we stay on that train, the longer we keep that secret, the more it will cost you. And all I can tell you is, in this, I'm not a licensed counselor, but I can tell you, I strayed on the train too long. It cost me 25 years of ministry that I loved. It cost me a 20-plus year reputation in a community where I was very active in the local political area and community development and other areas that our church was involved in. It caused the broken trust of an untold number of people, both in my church and my family. It nearly cost my marriage, and for a time I thought it had. It cost more money than I have time to calculate. That God not intervened, and to be honest, a few gracious people. I don't know that we could have survived economically through it. It cost us a lot. But I am one of a few. If statistics are accurate, a third of our pastors are struggling on a regular basis with some kind of sexual, unwanted, or unbiblical sexual behavior. If those statistics are accurate, half your men are in your church. Let me just ask you, if half your men in your church were alcoholics, what would you do about it? You'd do something about it. Well, I never did anything about it. I just kind of said, hey, that's bad. You need to stay away. And that's a pretty shallow approach. Mm-hmm. But that's what I did. So what I'm challenging you is to say, if you're sitting here today, you've already heard it. There are confidential ways. One of the things we do in our ministry is I deal with guys who it's beginning to destroy their lives. It's become a point where it's effectively hurting their ministries, their marriages, and other areas. And I just walk through it. I'm not the counselor. Tommy is the counselor. I'm just your local fishing guide who knows one lake. And I know that lake because I grew up on that lake. I lived in that lake. So if you want to catch fish in that lake, I'm your guy. Now, there may be bigger issues we need to deal with, and that's where Tom is going to help you with that. But I can walk with you through that and say, I have found victory and consistent victory through and I have testimonies of guys that can vouch for that, my own accountability. And my wife can testify, I hope to that, I believe to that as well. We just celebrated 40 years of marriage. And that is not because I've been the greatest husband. It's because God has demonstrated grace in our relationship and through her and into my life. But my biggest challenge for you would be talk to somebody now. The longer you keep the secret, the more the enemy uses it, and the bigger it gets, and the more it costs you. What you tolerate today controls you tomorrow. And that's what we have to focus on.
So if you look on your table, you've got a card Robert's put out that talks a little bit about his ministry. Robert, why don't you share with them your ministry, what you're doing now, which is really a way of playing offense on this situation.
All right, I put the cards out because I'm one of those guys that once you hear me talk, no one wants to talk to me in public. Because as soon as you talk to me in public, you're thinking, well, everybody's going to think that's what I'm talking to them about is my problem. And I put my card out there. It's got my personal cell number. You can text me, reach out to me. You can go to the website, check it out further. Certainly ask Dr. Moody or others. But our ministry is based on the fact that I just saw a recent Barna report that said that 58% of the people in the congregation want their leadership to speak about the consequences and the impact of unbiblical sexual behavior. And I just ask you, when's the last time you spoke on that subject? And when you did, was it more than just going, that's sinful, don't do that? Because I'm going to tell you that'll fall on deaf ears. Mm-hmm. Our ministry is about helping you as a church, helping you as an individual, develop a plan for your church that can help the men in your church, as well as help them one-on-one. We provide programs that run from 3 months to 1 year, where we walk with them one-on-one on a weekly basis and through accountability daily. And then we have Zoom groups that cover all over the country where they can join in, and we have accountability Zoom groups that meet every week, and they go through those Zoom groups together with other men. They can be in a Free Will Baptist one. They can get out of a Free Will Baptist one if they want. Whatever's necessary, but they have that opportunity to get involved. And that's my role in that. And if it's okay, I'm going to let my wife share on her part of that.
Absolutely.
So Judy will share hers.
Well, you know, I told Dr. Moody that I needed the question beforehand because I don't do surprises very well after our experience. So I needed the question. So the question was, what are some ways that help a woman recover from betrayal? And so I wrote a few down that helped me. One is you're not responsible for your husband's behavior. It's his decision, and you're not responsible for that. Do not hide the sin. Don't hide it to protect your reputation or your husband's reputation. Bring that sin out into the open. You don't have to buy a billboard on the highway or put it on the front page of the newspaper in town, but go to somebody who you trust, more than one person, and tell them what's going on. Don't hide it, because what is hidden does not heal. Seek help, and that's why we're here. Seek help, and keep seeking help. Sometimes I told the ladies in Texas, I spoke at their retreat, the first counselor I went to looked at me after I told her my story, and she said, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're a pastor's wife. I said, oh. And she was a Christian counselor.
Yeah.
So you got to keep seeking, and you'll find it, and I think you'll find it here.
Yeah.
Give yourself grace. You know, healing is messy, and just give yourself grace. Allow yourself to feel all the feelings, and then bring those feelings to the feet of Jesus. Your identity is not in your ministry. your identity is not in your husband. Your identity is in Christ and Christ alone. And recovery is a journey, and it will take as long as it takes. It's not fast, and it'll take as long as it takes.
Good.
So I work with women all over the United States by Zoom. I do one-on-one. I don't do group. And we have a 90-day program, and we cover many topics. But we start with trauma. What is trauma and how it affects you, not just emotionally, but there's a lot of different effects that trauma causes in your life. And then how to manage triggers. What are triggers and how to manage them, and how to set healthy boundaries, and how, when you come to the place that you're ready to consider forgiveness, what does that mean? What does that look like? And just walk with them. Like I've heard before, we're a safe place. You can come every week and talk to me about the exact same thing, cry about the exact same thing, and I will hear it. I will witness your pain.
Good job. Thank you, Miss Judy. So one of the things she said, she went to a counselor and they weren't very helpful. So ministry is a different animal. It's just different. And so that's why we have been very specific about the people that we utilize. They're almost to a person people that have been involved in ministry, if not directly, their parents were ministers, or in some cases, like with medical professionals, they're holistic in nature, and they utilize our Christian faith rather than it being an obstacle. And that's all I'll say about that. But it's different than you calling an insurance company. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we're dealing with professionals that do understand what we do, I should say. So this is a way of really playing offense. In the counseling community, there are some folks, like, for example, addictions, substance abuse addictions. They think you can't do substance abuse addiction counseling if you've never been a substance abuser. Now, we argue about that, but the point is, it's very helpful when somebody has walked that walk and come on the other side of it. It also helps them it helps because they know it better than anybody else. Brother Sherman, you have tried to go on offense as well. So tell them a bit about the ministry that you're trying to do as you go forward.
Well, after a series of sabbaticals, actually, church was very gracious to me. I actually took 2 separate sabbaticals. The first one, I wasn't disconnected, and I was very connected to the church still, so I just was away.
Yeah.
The second one, I did cut the phone off. No one could call except family, and that was only an emergency, actually. And so during that time and talking with several guys that came to realize that I just could not stay in the pastorate. It was just something about it. And so after much prayer and actually putting out a fleece, which is something I've only done a couple of times in my ministry or in my life, I came to realize that God had a different plan. And so now we do songs in the night. Songs in the night, unlike a lot of people ask me about, so you're a singer? No, I'm not. I promise you I'm not. My son is, not me. We started this ministry, and it's just simply taking hope to hurting hearts. Mm-hmm. And so we take Psalm 42, and we use that psalm to show how God can bring us through the most difficult of circumstances if we'll trust Him. Doesn't mean the pain goes away. Doesn't mean we don't ever weep again. Doesn't mean we stop hurting altogether. But it just means that we take that and try to help other people that are struggling. And because of that, we've seen God do some just miraculous things. Is it okay to share just a quick one?
Absolutely.
Young lady, her mother sent this to me after I had done Songs in the Night. Actually, the very first, second church I think I did. And her mother sent to me how her daughter had struggled with some mental health issues. And but then after hearing the songs in the night, went home, got on her knees, got in her Bible, started journaling, and then her mother wrote these words: "She's still seeking help, but she's finding hope."
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want to do. And so that's why I do what I do. I don't take a salary. We simply cover expenses from the ministry's part of it. I live off of my Social Security and just take hope to hurting hearts wherever the doors open. Actually, I've had the privilege of going across denominational lines and preaching in several different denominations over the last year. And so that's the ministry God's given us.
Eddie, if I may, Sherman came up to be at our church there in the Pittsburgh area. Our people absolutely loved him. Folks, depression is real. Suicide is real. I would encourage you to invite Sherman to come to your church and address this topic, because you don't know what somebody's thinking even in this moment. That's one of the sheep that you shepherd. I highly recommend you have Sherman come to your church.
So every loss is different. Probably that's the most difficult loss, a person would go through. Definitely a loss of a child, and then however that would go down. So part of what we try to do in these situations is we do have people who have walked through those things. They've come out on the other side. They still hurt. I think you can still see there's still pain. However, the more we go and the more we grow in the Lord, the better it gets. And so we've got folks that have approached us, and my wife, this another person, I don't know if I should name names or not, but anyway, we've got people who've given us their names, and we'll say, hey, this person, after a long illness, their wife passed away. This person, after a short illness, their wife passed away. And then we try to kind of match people up. That's what we'll try to do. We have done this before. What we have done it mostly with is LGBTQ issues. So we have 3 people that we utilize with that. And so I'll tell you, one of them is Danny Bear, so he's open to you being aware of him. And we'll often, when we have a parent that has a situation, I'll say, okay, this is a guy that you can talk to. He and his wife, they've been through this. And then we have 2 others that work with folks as well. A person that was a lesbian once, came out after. She was over 40 years of age. And then another person who's gone through the whole transgender business. And so we do that. Actually, we do that not just with pastors. We do that with anybody. Sometimes we get these like at the boot camps and all the rest of it, to help people know they're not by themselves. And so it's just a way of kind of addressing that and making that work. Well, that's our panel. Any quick questions before we close it out? Yes, sir. So we do pastors' wives. We do sometimes do the children of pastors. We've done the children of pastors. I don't want to get into it's usually very unique situations, but we are doing. I can't tell you how many we're doing, but we're doing a fair number. So basically, we look at it is, if this child functions a lot better, that pastor's going to be a lot better. And then there's also situations where we have children that were probably harmed as a result of ministry. So this is terrible. Part of it is the whole how confidential everything is, but that's a question that will usually come up at questions at nefwb.org. We do our best to help them out. And we do use a multitude. We're matching on gender. We have a Spanish marriage and family therapist, Spanish-speaking marriage and family therapist. So originally we were trying to work through the language. We got that covered. Anyway, so good question. Yes, sir, Robert.
We work with pastors for sure, but we'll work with any male, any female. They don't have to be married, single. we'll work with either way. The spectrum's pretty broad. I don't usually work with teenage boys, but we do have some resources that can direct parents for that. I have worked with a senior in high school, and he's done really well. But that was with his parents certainly having a lot of involvement. But that's the youngest I've gone.
Yep. And so that's where we get into, if you think about it, the first aid ready part is where we're trying to prepare you as churches to deal with your congregations. But these folks here, Sherman would do that too, would be willing to do things to help with your church, would help as well.